We have a big solar storm on its way to Earth, and the region responsible looks like it has more up its sleeve. That story and more in this week's Spotlight. Space weather this week continues to command our full attention. As we take a look at our Earth-facing disk, we have been getting a few more small solar storm launches from region 3814. This is the region that gave us the back-to-back eruptions that caused a near G4 level solar storm just last week and brought Aurora clear down to mid-latitudes. But it looks like it's calming down for the most part. Really, what all eyes are on are region 3825. This is the region that was causing all sorts of big solar flares and big solar storms on the sun's far side, and sure enough, it's living up to its reputation. As you can see here on the 14th, it fires off a big X-class flare. You can see it right here. Bam! That is an X 4.5 class flare. In fact, it caused a big R3 level radio blackout. You can see it here over Europe, the Atlantic, and even into the Western Hemisphere for a while. This one lasted a little while. In fact, when you take a look at VHF and HF radio propagation, look at this. My goodness, what a radio blackout before things came back. But that's not the only thing this thing fired. It also launched a big solar storm, and you can see it here in Suvi. This thing was so big and so fast, we barely saw it before it was out of the frame in Suvi. But it does look like this thing is large enough that it might be clipping Earth. We're going to talk more about that in a minute. In fact, as we take a look at it in coronagraphs, you can see the bulk of the material from this solar storm is going to go mainly north and east of Earth, but you can also see a little bit of a halo. Can you see this right around in here? So it is a full halo, and so we're definitely going to get a shock wave and possibly some of the material from this structure hitting Earth, but it's more of a glancing blow. And again, we'll go over the model predictions a little bit later. Meanwhile, as we continue taking a look what we're dealing with, we do have a couple coronal holes. You can see them here and here. Likely we're going to get a little bit of solar or fast solar wind from this coronal hole, and if it does, because we're so close to the equinox, we're actually going to get, pull this back, we're actually going to get a decent storming from that, possibly through about the 19th before things calm down. And then on top of that, as we continue watching region 3825, this region looked like it had been calming down after that big solar flare. This is the magnetic complexity here, and you can see the blue and the red colors. Those colors are ones you don't want touching each other, but you can actually watch right around in here. As I play this, you can see a pop right there, boom. That was the X 4.5 class flare. You can actually see it in the magnetic configuration, reconfiguring everything. And so we thought things, okay, well, things are going to calm down now. But actually, over the last 24 hours, you'll start seeing a little bit of red build up right in here. This is not a good sign. This is showing that we actually are getting some flux again from the opposite polarity. So if this keeps emerging like this, well, then this could show that we might have the potential for another big solar flare. And as this region continues to rotate into the Earth strike zone, if we get a big solar flare, once this region rotates a little bit more towards center disk, we could also get yet another big solar storm. So all eyes are on it. We are definitely paying attention because this show may not yet be over. Now, returning to that solar storm launch, we take a look at our solar storm prediction model, NOAA. Now, this is NOAA's version of the model. Top panel's density, the bottom panel's velocity, and you're looking down at the sun from the North Pole with Earth being off to the right. And as we set this solar storm model in motion, you're going to see that solar storm being launched off to the east of Earth. You can see it right there, but we have a flanking blow. In fact, NOAA's expecting the solar storm to hit by just before noon on the 16th, which is quite fast. They're actually expecting a G3 level impact, but that's not the only run, and it's kind of hard to get the speed just right when these structures are moving so quickly. So as we take a look at NASA's version of the model, again, we're looking down at the sun from the North Pole with Earth being off to the right. This particular run they actually have two runs. This run is the faster run, showing that this structure is going to potentially arrive earlier. Now, you can see the structure as I set it in motion. It looks like it's actually got a bigger swath of the structure hitting Earth, so it's a little bit more Earth-directed than the NOAA run. And it also shows that if that is the case, this structure could hit us early on the 16th. So that's ahead of the NOAA prediction. But then if we take a look at their other run, which is actually a little bit slower, again, this structure is moving off to the east, but this time it's a little bit further to the east, and that means it's more of a flanking blow, and this one looks like it's going to hit late on the 16th. So really, the direction, how far east that structure is moving, is going to matter a lot. On top of that, you saw those coronal holes, which means we've got the fast solar wind streams, and if that fast solar wind actually deflects this structure off to the east, we could have something like this scenario rather than the earlier hit. So this is where we're kind of really trying to figure out when the structure is going to hit and how strong it's going to be. If it hits on the earlier side, then we will likely get a G3 level storm. If it hits on the later side, well, we may not have a storm that lasts all that long, and we may just get a bunch of fast solar wind instead. So it's really hard to know a priori what's going to happen. So Aurora photographers, definitely stay vigilant and be ready on the 16th because it could hit early or it could hit late. Now, switching to our moon, we are passing through the full moon phase, with the full moon being on the 18th. And by the 21st, the moon will still be almost 84% illuminated. So you night sky watchers, if you want to catch the bright aurora, hopefully bright aurora, you're going to have the bright moon to contend with. So be sure to check your local rise and set times. Now, switching to our solar storm conditions and aurora possibilities over the coming week, we are anticipating the hit from that big solar storm that's on its way to Earth. At high latitudes, NOAA is expecting severe storm conditions. In fact, they're expecting a 90% chance of a severe storm that's at least a G3 level, and they're expecting it on the 16th, but this could move into the 17th because we don't really know whether or not that storm is going to hit early or hit late. So aurora photographers at high latitudes expect on the 16th and into the 17th, we could have some really decent storming. And then by the 18th, we should be sitting kind of in some fast solar wind as like a chaser. And then things finally will be calming down into the 19th and possibly quiet by the 20th. But remember, region 3825 sure looks like it's building something and it's got more up its sleeves. So we may have some more solar storms later on in the week. Now, as we move to mid latitudes, well, we're also expecting a severe storm. In fact, NOAA's giving us about a 50% chance of a severe storm at mid-latitudes. I'm expecting that will probably linger into the 17th, maybe die off early into the 17th. But I still think between the 16th and the 17th, that's when you aurora photographers at mid-latitudes, if we're going to get a decent show, that's when it's going to be. And then things will die down quite quickly after that. We might get a little bit of activity from the fast solar wind. Plus, we do have the preconditioning of the Earth because we just had a big solar storm. So the Earth is kind of already rattled. So we could really get a decent show at mid-latitudes. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed that the fast wind doesn't blow it out of the way. And then by the 19th and 20th, we should be back to unsettled conditions. But again, do not take your eyes off region 3825. Switching to our solar flare and dayside radio blackout outlook over the coming week, we are sitting in the high triple digits. We've got the 175 right now, not up into the 200s anymore, but we could be going back and reaching up to that as we move into the latter part of this week. The main reason why the solar flux is down because we have those big coronal holes in Earth view, which has a tendency to dim things down a little bit. Nonetheless, we're still sitting at moderate noise. NOAA's giving us about a 55% chance of M-class flares at an R1 to R2 level radio blackout, and even about a 20% chance of X-class flares at an R3 level radio blackout over the next day or so. I'm going to go ahead and calm that down, but I'm really not, this is NOAA's forecast. I'm not sure if I should have deviated from it because it sure looks like region 3825 is building something. So expect these numbers to potentially change very quickly depending upon whether or not that new flux that we're seeing really is new stuff that's emerging, because that could really cause all this to rise quite quickly. Meanwhile, we're going to be keeping it at moderate noise for now, and we've got some new regions on the sun's far side that are about to rotate into Earth view, and that could give us even more chances for big solar flares and big solar storms. And now switching to our radiation storm and polar aviation outlook over the coming week, we are sitting at the D2 minor range right now. This is at flight level 360 for you aviators. It's also just the elevated S0 range for everybody else. We are sitting under that S1 radiation storm level right now, even though we do have elevated fluxes. And this is because we have some radiation storms that are dying down. But region 3825 could definitely give us yet another radiation storm. So right now we're sitting at about a 20% chance for an S1 to S2 level storm. That chance may increase just a little bit as this big solar storm goes over us, but likely the fluxes will begin to start calming down after that. And by hopefully about the 19th, we should be back to the D1 normal range. And as long as region 3825 doesn't light up yet another radiation storm, things should go back into the green. But until then, you frequent flyers, and this does mean air crew and you high-risk passengers, please take a look at those ICAO advisories often and be sure to take any changes in these conditions as a consideration in your flight plans. So the space weather this week is commanding our full attention. We do have that big solar storm on its way to Earth, and depending upon whether or not that storm is deflected a bit to the east, it's either going to give us a complete flanking blow, or it's going to hit us a little bit more head-on and give us a bigger storm. So Aurora photographers, well, be ready, because it could hit us early on the 16th or possibly as late on the 16th. But we could see Aurora clear down to mid-latitudes, and this makes me so happy that the Polaris Dawn mission, that they finally splashed down, and so they don't have to be up in the space environment during all of this mess. Now, amateur radio operators and emergency responders, well, not only do you have this big solar storm to deal with, but our 3-level radio blackouts are back on the menu, just like we talked about last week. So you're just going to have to hunker down and deal with it. And it looks like region 3825 is not done yet. So we could be getting more of these radio blackouts continuing easily through this next week and possibly the week after, before this thing finally rotates to the sun's far side. So just, grin and bear it. It's not your rig, I promise. And now you GPS users, well, the news isn't all that great for you either. On Earth's night side during that solar storm, you're going to have to be dealing with GPS reception issues due to the Aurora, so be aware of that. And you might have issues if you're a drone flyer. You need to calibrate your magnetometers often. But then also on the day side, well, we have these big radio blackouts, and that could be a problem for you too, especially near dawn and near dusk. So all I can say is just stay vigilant and check your calibrations often, and we'll get through it. I'm Tamitha Skov, the Space Weather Woman. Thank you for watching.